have 3 members. Our group member are Sitinora, Huchi, and I. I'm Ma Haixia, a graduate student, major in science education. I will do the first part. Today's topic is quasi-experimental research design. Okay. I'll introduce the first part from 5 aspects. They are definitions, features,
recording in progress,
and disadvantages. Validity and reliability issues, and procedures, so on. Let's move on to the first one, definition. Quasi-experimental research is a research method in social science research. It differs from real experimental research in that it uses manipulation programs to take advantage of natural science and flexible control experimental subjects. Simple put, a quasi-experiment is not an experiment. A quasi-experiment doesn't have randomly assigned groups, because the main components of the real experiments is a randomly assigned group.
Recording stopped.
Which constitutes the only difference between a quasi-experimental study and an actual experimental study. Here is an example to illustrate this point. For example, there are 2 classes of experimental subjects due to the lack of the random assignment. These groups are not equivalent, like one group is superior to the other groups in some content, which may lead to selection bias and affect the final experimental results. Give so many sampling threads. Quasi-experimental research are generally avoided where possible because the assignments are not random. It is hard to conclude causality that in real experiments. However, quasi-experimental research designs are still useful when randomization is impossible or unthinkable. The true experimental design may not be possible or may be too costly, especially for resource-poor researchers, as a quasi-experimental design enable you to investigate a problem using data that has been paid for or collected by someone else. Because they control for confounding variables better than other forms of research, they have higher external validity than most real experiments, and higher internal validity than other non-experimental studies. Let's move on to the features. Compared with the real experiments, quasi-experimental research has following features and characteristics. First, quasi-experimental research is a non-random distribution method for research objects, which is more suitable for studies with many objects. A wide range and difficulty to achieve random distribution, although it cannot control the research conditions and reduce the control level. It can apply the principles and requirements of real experimental design as much as possible under conditions close to reality, and maximize the control factors, reducing the control level and enhance the reality. Second, the environment of quasi-experimental research is real and natural. So it is very difficult from the situation in real life. So there is no need to set up a control group, and it can completely use itself as a controlled study. Second, in general, no causal conclusions can be drawn from the result of quasi-experimental studies. Here are some advantages and limitations of design. For advantage, according to the non-randomization method, the research objects are divided into the experimental and the control groups, which improves the non-equivalent dependence variable in the research design and can be more controlled, targeted, and efficient. Second, quasi-experimental research designs tend to have more real-world applications, especially in social science. Third, relationships between one internal intervention and multiple outcomes can be obtained or rely on statistical analysis and alternative interpretation of other real experiments, thereby reducing the time required to arrive at results. For limitation, because the researchers control the variables, the select research objects were not representative enough, which would affect the influence of the experimental results to the whole to varying degrees. Second, risk of inaccurate data. Because quasi-experimental designs often borrow information from other experimental methods, there is a risk of incomplete or inaccurate data. Third, risk of bias. As the researchers select based aligned elements and qualifications, there is a risk of human bias in the selection. Okay, this is my part. Now let's hand it over to my teammates.
Okay. The fourth one, validity and the reliability issue. For our study, we have internal validity and external validity. Internal validity is approximately truth about inference regarding effective or causal relationship. This is why validity is important for quasi experiments, because they are all about causal relationships. It occurs when the experimenter tries to control all variables that could affect the result of the experiment. Statistical regression, history, and the participant are all possible traits to internal validity. External validity depends on whether the treatment study have a homogeneous effective across different subsets of people, time, context, and method of study, or whether the sign and magnitude of any treatment effectives change across subsets in ways that may not be acknowledged or understood by the researcher. So, quasi experiments have lower internal validity than true experiments, but they often have higher external validity, as they can use real-world intervention instead of artificial laboratory setting. Okay, and for the fifth one, procedure of the research design, I have some list for here. The first one, we state a causal hypothesis. And second, we include at least 2 levels of the independent variable, although we may not manipulate it. The third one, usually cannot assign subject to group, but must accept existing groups. Last one, include specific procedure for testing hypotheses, with including some control for trait to validity. And the second part is my partner to process this one.
Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. Now it's my turn to explain about part B. So we have chose an article that been using a quasi-experimental research design. And the title of the article is a quasi-experimental control study of a school-based mental health program to improve the self-esteem of primary school children. So if we look at the research purpose or the objectives of the study, this study FP for improving primary school children's self-esteem. And the variables involved in the study, we have 5 independent variables, which are physical well-being, emotional well-being, family relationships, friendships, and school performance. And the dependent variable is the student's self-esteem. So next we will look at the trial profile. So basically this is the chart on how they choose the total sample for the analysis. Okay, from the total number of 2,297 students who participate in the study. Then they got a sample analysis for 794 and 592 from other schools and classes. For the population, as I mentioned before, 2,297 students, and the participants were recruited through the Board of Education of 6 cities, which are Fukui City, Sabai City, Katsuyama City, Sakai City, Komatsu City, and Shimizu City in the central region of Japan from 9 primary schools. And the sample of the study are 1,386 students, 794 participants in the intervention group, and 592 participants in the control group. And they use a stratified sampling technique. And the research instrument employed in the study was the KINDLR questionnaire. Okay, next we are issues of validity and reliability. So the KINDLR questionnaire was used for 2 main reasons. And the first reason is it is the only questionnaire in Japan that confirmed to be reliable and effective as an assessment tool for measuring self-esteem in children. And according to Shibata et al. 2003, they confirmed the reliability and validity of the Japanese primary school version of the scale with 380 participants at least. And the reliability was confirmed by internal consistency and retesting methods. Validity was confirmed by the association with psychological skills and the ability to discriminate between 3 groups with different mental and physical states. Next is the data analysis employed in the study. Okay, this study was tests, and all statistical analysis were conducted using IBM SPSS version 27.0 and R version 4.1.0. And Ho-Chi, can you tell us about the findings of the study?
Yes, finding of the study, this study suggested that TF can improve the self-estimate for primary school children with low and medium self-estimate. At baseline, the physical well-being, emotional well-being, self-estimate, and school scores did not differ significantly between the intervention and the control groups. Conversely, the family and friends score showed significant difference between the intervention and the control groups. Your microphone's not open. Siti Nora?
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay, for the discussion and the implication of the study, first, the TFP provided social support. Second, the TFP does not limit the areas in which children develop their skills. And third one, during the TFP, children in the intervention group kept a personal file folder of what they had written in each session. And in contrast, can Haisha help me?
Yes, of course. In contrast, the TFP did not affect the higher level children. Children with a higher level self-esteem had decreased self-esteem scores in both the intervention and control groups. An RCT would have been useful to reduce this bias, although the lack of constance from the headmasters made it difficult to conduct an RCT. In future research, we will follow up the represent study by conducting an RCT by close communication with schools.
Okay, so that's all from us. Thank you everyone for lending your ears, and Assalamualaikum.
All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, doctor and friends.